Would it be a mistake for a nonprofit founder, CEO, or executive director to take advice from the father of advertising, especially when he warns against a common danger inside most nonprofit organizations? David Ogilvy, also known as the godfather of branding, first published his seminal work, Ogilvy on Advertising, in 1983. From that time to today, this classic has sold over 1 million copies and has been translated into 14 languages. A lot has changed since then, but not his foundational wisdom as an outside strategist and an ad agency resource. His warning then is still relevant today, and it will be forever. Perhaps even more so for a nonprofit executive like you. Specifically, this issue is discussed in Chapter 4, which describes how to avoid this inherent risk in your organization. How does his voice from afar observation and experience reflection apply to you in the future of your nonprofit? Take a look at what Ogilvy says and see if you are against his caution. Chapter 4 of this Bible of Advertising is titled How to Run an Advertising Agency. But this chapter could just as easily have been called How to Run a Nonprofit Organization, and maybe even more so because it applies directly to all of us working for the greater good in our separate worlds of charitable philanthropy. Ogilvy directly cautions about how you hire, and in turn, how you rely on your internal staff, who to listen to, when, and for what reasons. Equally so, who you are not to be limited by, and when not to settle for their siloed or biased constraints. In this regard, Mr. Ogilvy uses the powerful metaphor of the Matryoshka nesting dolls. You know, the little rounded dolls of decreasing sizes placed inside one another, and therein lies the pitfall to be avoided. Here's why. When you look up any 10 definitions of these wooden dolls, you will find the words of decreasing size. That is, reference from large to small. David Ogilvy, on the other hand, redirects the order of assembly. He suggests applying from small to large. Through the giving of these decorative figurines from the Gorky region of Russia, Ogilvy illustrates to a hired or promoted head of office that they should hire up, not hire down. This means they should hire people who are smarter and more experienced than they are, and especially those who are not locked into internal culture. With this approach, the organization can grow into a company of giants. In doing so, the entity bypasses the tragedy of spiraling backward into a company of dwarfs. This principle of finding better staff also applies to seeking out better counsel and at times better implementation. Too often, as a nonprofit grows, it reaches a plateau that surpasses its present level of skills. Understanding, experience, evaluation, and contribution all start to wane. These shortages limit the nonprofit's ability to quickly and effectively respond to downturns. You are also less able to find previously unrecognized solutions and avoid missed opportunities for growth and funding. Unsurprisingly, heads of nonprofit like you often experience an overload of priorities and duties. You may be frequently understaffed or tethered to not being able to match pay scales of commercial companies. You may often have to rely on available levels of abilities, mindsets, and willingness. Scott Schang, noted AI expert, calls this the decision latency complex. He notes that such organizational friction encompasses the amount of time, distance, and energy it takes to move from signal knowledge to actionable action. When opportunity is not supported by internal experience or reflective understanding, you often miss an enlarged array of options. This can lead to less than or even bad decisions being made. Opportunities can also be lost that didn't need to be passed over. It is not at all unusual for internal attachment, siloed survival, and confirmation bias to block critical points of development in a nonprofit's growth, all of which inhibit your outreach to those you are commissioned by your mission statement to serve. One philosopher describes it this way: As long as an organization's staff has certain desires about how things ought to be, they can't see how things could be, and at times they won't let it be. Another writer reminds us that to get something you have never had, you have to do something you have never done. Dr. Joe Dispenza of Hay House states that if you are getting the same old advice, you'll be making the same old decisions. He further acknowledges that, quote, same choices will lead to same behaviors. Same behaviors will lead to same experiences. You have to interrupt those patterns that keep you looping. You cannot create a new way forward by relying on an old way that is taking you backward. Sometimes you have to stop cutting off the end of the roast and simply buy a longer pan. This wise fable, frequently known as the pot roast principle, warns us about this danger. Internal culture can blindly follow tradition and establish habits which have grown obsolete. These can be adhered to relentlessly by organizational gatekeepers, those internal staff members who, with the best of intentions, block the very paths that could lead to greater impact and the resolution of difficult situations. In closing, the following 4 questions can be used by you to sort through the clinging vines that can be entangling your external growth. As you review your internal and external counsel, ask yourself these questions. What is not going as well as I would like for it to go? Number 2, where are my high center grounds and my clinging vines? Number 3, what needs to change for better and fresher insight? And number 4, who can help me see where I am, where things are not as they could be, and how they can be altered, amended, or added to? The journey of a nonprofit leader can be a lonely one. It's a huge amount of responsibility with not always a lot of resources. And sometimes the resources that got you where you are now are not the resources that would lead you to where you want to be later. Sometimes, and even often, it helps to catch a new bus traveling a new road with more experienced people sitting in the seats, even if for only a short part of the trip. In the end, you can be assured that your path to funding and prospering your nonprofit's mission may come through many different shapes and sizes. That's why you can take comfort in knowing that all roads still lead to the same castle. It's just that sometimes the smaller road can lead into a bigger road that will merge into an even bigger road on your way to an even bigger future for you and your nonprofit. Until the next issue of Castle Roads, travel well. E. Paul.